Hello, my name is Julia Smith. I use the pronouns she, her, and I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. For over 10 years, I was blessed to work with LGBTQ plus students at Calvin University. In this video, I want to focus on one sentence of the Human Sexuality Report. God, who made all people in his image, makes it quite clear that he hates violence, especially when violence is done to the vulnerable. This is something we can all agree on. In the Old Testament, God is deeply concerned for the plight of those who are marginalized and vulnerable, widows, orphans, and foreigners. In the New, Jesus defends children, affirms women who have been abused, and brings outcasts back to a place of belonging in the community. As Paul writes in Romans 13:10, love does no harm to a neighbor. God, who made all people in his image, makes it quite clear that he hates violence, especially when violence is done to the vulnerable. This sentence comes on page 46 of the report in the section on pornography. The authors lament that porn incites people, mostly men, to act out violence against other people, mostly women and children. The authors also recognize the psychological violence porn causes when people internalize its powerful negative messages about themselves, leading to depression, anxiety, self-harm, shame, and hatred of the body. The report's authors acknowledge that powerful negative messages about a group of people cause psychological and physical violence. God hates this violence that is done to the vulnerable. Now, when the report discusses lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex people, you would expect it to apply the same understanding. But in fact, we see the opposite. First, it barely even acknowledges the serious and pervasive harms LGBTQ plus people suffer today. And second, the report itself perpetuates and increases harm. It does violence to the vulnerable. What are the pervasive harms suffered by LGBTQ plus people? Here are just a few. In schools, LGBTQ plus students are harassed and bullied at alarming rates. In a 2019 national survey, 99% of LGBTQ plus students heard the word gay used as a slur at school. Almost all were distressed by it. 58% of LGBTQ plus students were sexually harassed at school in the previous year. Almost half experienced cyberbullying. Over a quarter were physically harassed at school in the past year based on sexual orientation. In the home, many parents reject their child who comes out as gay, bi, or trans with dire consequences. Across the US, 30 to 43% of youth using homeless drop-in facilities are LGBTQ plus. They have run away from home or been kicked out by parents because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. When it comes to mental health, lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth are almost 5 times as likely to attempt suicide as straight youth. Youth whose families strongly reject their child's orientation are over 8 times as likely to attempt suicide as those with little or no family rejection. Adults also suffer harm. More than 1 in 3 LGBTQ plus adults faced some kind of unjust treatment based on prejudice in the past year, and more than 3 in 5 transgender adults did so. Half of all LGBTQ plus adults report that such prejudice negatively affects their mental health. powerful negative messages about a group of people cause psychological and physical violence. Yet, the Human Sexuality Report is all but silent on this violence suffered by gay and queer people and the toll it takes on their lives. The authors do include 4 references to the frightening realities experienced by transgender youth, citing the largest ever survey of LGBTQ+ youth mental health conducted by the Trevor Project last year. They note that over 60% of transgender and non-binary youth reported engaging in self-harm in the past 12 months, and 40% reported being physically threatened or harmed in their lifetime due to their gender identity. Page 71. The report here acknowledges that trans youth are at risk, alarming risk, of physical harm and death. Violence is being done to the vulnerable. But instead of addressing the root causes of the harm or explaining that gay, bi, and queer youth are also at great risk, the report merely sympathizes with parents of trans children and moves on. If we do not remedy the causes of the violence, we are passing by on the other side of the road. That's what the Human Sexuality Report does. It perpetuates and even increases the harm to a highly vulnerable group of people in our churches. How so? A key claim in the report is that male and female sex difference intended for procreation is, quote, the very crux, unquote, of the image of God, page 75. This interpretation only arose since the mid-20th century and is hotly contested. By connecting the image of God to maleness and femaleness, the report implies that lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, intersex, and transgender folks are less than fully human because they don't reflect the image of God like cisgender heterosexuals do. It tells LGBTQ+ people they are broken and disordered in the very essence of their humanity. Leanne Simon, an intersex Christian, poignantly describes the personal impact of such language. She says, "When you say that intersex is a result of the fall, what I hear is that I'm a result of the fall and that I shouldn't exist. You're telling me that's what God believes about me." The report's theology, linking LGBTQ+ people in a special way to the fall and denying them the full image of God, pathologizes a whole class of people and creates a category of second-class image bearers. It has profound impacts on people's lives. It fuels shame, self-hatred, anxiety, depression, and suicide because vulnerable people in our churches internalize its powerful negative message. And it does nothing to delegitimize violence committed against LGBTQ+ people. Despite all the report's talk of pastoral care, this theology makes our churches radically unsafe for our LGBTQ+ friends and family members. The report also harms LGBTQ+ people in specific ways. For instance, it overstates the possibility of successful marriages between gay and straight people. Such marriages do exist, but they fail at extremely high rates with much hurt. It characterizes trans people as deceived by the devil, page 84, and stokes misplaced fears of trans women as rapists, page 63 and 91. These demeaning stereotypes greatly endanger vulnerable transgender people. And even though the report acknowledges that having one's gender pronouns respected by others halves the suicide rate for trans and non-binary youth, the report itself uses the wrong gender pronouns in several places, as well as the derogatory term transgendered. This current report goes beyond previous reports by including transgender, non-binary, and intersex people in its classification of disordered, and by raising the stakes of its teaching to the highest level of salvation or damnation. It will increase the anxiety of the LGBTQ+ youth in my congregation and yours. It will drive them deeper into the closet, into isolation, shame, and self-loathing. It will drive many out of the church door, and it will drive some to try to end their life. In closing, the Human Sexuality Report recognizes that people are harmed by internalizing negative messages about themselves. Why then does the same report pile on powerful negative messages about LGBTQ+ people and expect them not to internalize shame and self-hatred, not to become depressed or think about suicide? Why does the report not recognize that it is doing violence to God's beloved children